All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Hammond. I'm the Director of Training Programs here with DotNetNuke Corporation. Thank you guys for attending today's DotNetNuke Explained Upgrades webinar. In the webinar today, I'm going to be showing you how to perform upgrades for DotNetNuke. We'll take a look at a couple of different upgrades. We'll talk about the process for doing an upgrade and how you can go from version to version within DNN. Now, specifically, we're going to upgrade a website that's running on DotNetNuke version 5 to version 6. We'll also be upgrading a DotNetNuke version 6 website to run on the latest version of DotNetNuke Professional Edition. And the process for upgrading for both of those scenarios is essentially the same. So we'll walk through that process today. Now, today's webinar is part of our Explained series. We have a variety or a collection of 6 different webinars here. This is number 5 in the series that will show you how to do upgrades. The previous topics have been about installation, basic site administration, skinning, and module development. And then I think in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, we'll have a content edit and updates webinar on 5/22. So you can sign up for that by visiting our web seminars page on DotNetNuke.com. Now, all of these sessions are being recorded. The previous sessions are already available on our website. Today's session is being recorded. You'll get a link for that, probably mailed to you tomorrow, with information on how to access that recording. So you can always come back and watch those recordings again, or if you have to cut out early, or you want to send the recording on to someone else within your organization. They will be posted online. It'll probably be live on the website later today, but you guys will get an email tomorrow with the information on how to access that. Now, specifically in today's webinar, we're going to talk about why you might upgrade DotNetNuke, specifically when you might perform the upgrade, talk about things you need to keep in mind before doing an upgrade, and then really go into the process of performing the upgrade. Like I said, we're going to be upgrading one website from Community Edition to Professional Edition. We will also be upgrading actually a DotNetNuke 5 website all the way up to the latest 6.2 beta release. So DotNetNuke 6.2 will be coming out here in the next couple of months, and we're going to perform an upgrade to the latest beta of that. I'll talk more about that when we get to that portion. At the end of the session, we will have time for Q&A. Today's session for Q&A, we're only going to be taking questions or answering questions about the upgrade process. For additional questions, I'd recommend posting in our DotNetNuke Community Exchange, found under the Community tab on DotNetNuke.com, or within our forums. Now, some of the steps that we're going to be going through today, you can find in the URL that's listed on the screen here, bit.ly/DNN upgrades. That will take you to the wiki entry on our website for performing upgrades. So it's a good reference for how to do upgrades after you've gone through this particular webinar, if you want to see some of those steps documented in written form. So for now, we'll go ahead and jump right in and start talking about why you might upgrade within DotNetNuke. So one of the benefits of the platform for DNN is there are new releases almost on a monthly basis, sometimes every other month. Those releases typically will contain bug fixes, so fixing any issues that are found within the platform, security enhancements if there are any security issues that are found and corrected, and oftentimes we'll also be adding new features. Now, for the most part, we try to maintain or create new features in our major releases, so say version 6 to 6.1 and then 6.2 is coming out, but you will see some new features added here or there in what we call our minor releases. So a minor release would be going from version 6.1.4 to 6.1.5. Now, the upgrade process for going from various versions is going to be the same, and we'll talk through that here in today's webinar. We do recommend that you try to maintain or try to keep up with upgrades with DotNetNuke. That way, when there are security issues that are fixed, your site will remain secure. As we said, there's also a number of bug fixes and other enhancements that will go into the platform. Now, if you're on an older version of DotNetNuke, I'm going to show you how you can still perform an upgrade to the latest release of DNN as we go through the process here today. Now, when to do an upgrade? Well, obviously, we would recommend that you try to maintain an upgrade whenever we have a new release. We understand that not everyone can go through that process every time, though. When we have major releases, we oftentimes have major enhancements to the product, new features, overhauls of functionality within the application. Minor releases, like I said, typically contain bug fixes and security fixes. Now, you would always do an upgrade after you perform a backup. Now, we're going to talk about backups here in just a few moments. Backups are an important part of the upgrade process. Another thing to keep in mind when you're performing an upgrade for DotNetNuke is we do recommend that you try to do your upgrade in a test environment. In most cases, you don't want to take your production website and upgrade it to a new release of DotNetNuke without first testing that process. And the steps we're going to go through today will show you how you can go through and test that process. Make sure the upgrade's going to work before you do it in production. That way, if you have any problems, you can try to get those addressed. Now, when you're performing an upgrade for DotNetNuke, there are a couple things to keep in mind. While DotNetNuke strives to maintain backwards compatibility, there are certain things that can cause problems with an upgrade. If you have custom modules that you've developed, you've purchased, or someone else has developed for you, there's always the risk that they have done something to the application, to the database, that causes an upgrade to fail. That's why we recommend going through the testing process. Custom skins may have issues during an upgrade depending on the way they approach cascading style sheets within the platform. Upgrading from an old version to a new version of DotNetNuke, if you are, say, on version DotNetNuke version 4, and you're trying to upgrade to version 6, DotNetNuke version 4 is roughly 3 or 4 years old now, so there's been a lot of changes, a lot of enhancements over time. You should be able to do an upgrade from version 4 to version 6, but you do need to go through a testing process, make sure that the upgrade doesn't cause any problems with functionality, content on your website. And once again, like I said, the steps that we're going to be going through here today are all documented within that wiki entry found at bit.ly/DNNupgrades. Now, let's go ahead and start talking about actually performing our upgrade. The first thing you should do before you do anything else when you go to do an upgrade for DotNetNuke, you should back up your website. You need to back up the file system. You also need to back up the database. Now, performing these two steps, depending on the size of your website, might be very quick. It might take a while. If you have a lot of files on your website, a couple gigs of files, well, backing up the file system may take a few minutes. With a clean website like we're going to utilize here, backing up the file system, backing up the database is actually very quick and painless. So I'm going to show you how to perform the backup of the file system and the database here in just a moment. Now, I will point out one thing. I have two different websites that we're going to upgrade today. The first website is running DotNetNuke version 5.5.0, and it's running on Microsoft's SQL Server Express. So SQL Server Express is a free edition of SQL Server. It treats the files a little bit differently than a regular version of SQL Server. So the backup process for SQL Express is going to differ slightly from a full install of SQL Server. Now, I'll show you both of those processes, but I'm not going to do the backup of a full database or a full SQL Server until we perform this first upgrade. So the first website we're going to be backing up and the first database runs on SQL Server Express, and I have it running locally on my desktop here, which has a web server. So let's go ahead and take a look at the process I would follow in order to perform the backup for those two, the file system and for the database. So if I go ahead and I pull up a browser here, we can see this is my DNN Upgrades website. I just have it set up running on a local website using the URL DNN Upgrades. You guys wouldn't be able to access it. It's only a website I have running on my local machine. But it is a clean DotNetNuke version 5.5.0 website. If we go from the host menu into the host settings page, we can see that version number on the screen here. So you can see it's currently version 5.5.0. So now we need to go ahead and perform the backup of the database and the file system. Well, my file system is currently running, or I have the website currently running in my C drive under inetpub and then under www root. So that's where I have the files for this particular website, and I have a folder called DNN Upgrades. If I were to navigate into that DNN Upgrades folder, we would find all of the contents of our .NET version 550 website. In order to perform the backup of the file system and of the database, what I'm actually going to do is simply copy that DNN Upgrades folder. Now you'll notice I also have a DNN Upgrades 2 folder. That's the second site that we're going to work with later today. So we'll come back and upgrade that one later. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of this DNN Upgrades folder. I'm going to right-click on it, simply choose Copy. Now I could paste that copy wherever I like. I'm just going to paste it right here in the same folder. I might put it into a backup folder somewhere on my file system, but for now I'm just going to put it into the same location. Now, because I'm running DotNetNuke locally, I'm running on SQL Express, I run into this file in use error. And what that's telling me is the database.mdf file, which is actually the DotNetNuke database, it's in a folder called app data, is in use because SQL Server Express is currently connected to it. And because SQL Express is connected to it, I can't make a copy of that file. So I can't back up the database without performing an additional step here. If I go ahead and click Try Again, it just repeats the window here, and I keep getting Try Again. So rather than trying again or skipping, I'm going to cancel this process. So I'm going to cancel that, and you'll see now that I have a DNN Upgrades and a DNN Upgrades copy folder. What I'm going to go ahead and do is delete the copy folder because we didn't actually complete the backup process. So I want to make sure to start that over. I'm going to delete that folder. Now, because I'm running SQL Express, I need to disconnect SQL Express from that database. And there's a couple of different approaches to doing so. What I'm going to go ahead and do is load up my Internet Information Services Manager. This is our web server. It's how we manage the web server. And if you went through the installation webinar from a couple of weeks ago, we went in and we configured websites in here. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to left-click on my DNN Upgrades website, and then over on the right side of the page, I'm going to go ahead and click on Stop. Now I've effectively turned off the website, and what we can go ahead and do now is switch back in and try to make another copy of that Upgrades folder. So I right-clicked, chose Copy, pasting again, and that copy process completes. Now, because we were using SQL Server Express, we have just now backed up our database and our file system in this one copy process. If you're using a full version of SQL Server or a remote SQL Server, all we would have done here is simply backed up the file system. Because we're on SQL Express, we actually backed up the file system and the database. And if I were to try to go back over here to my browser and I were to try to reload the page we were on a moment ago, we're going to end up getting a 404 message here because our website is no longer running. That's fine. We'll turn the website back on. If we go ahead and turn the website back on within IIS, click on Start, and we refresh again, the website will come back up. Now, one thing to keep in mind, after you've performed a backup of your file system and your database, if anyone is making changes to your website, those changes are not backed up. So you would typically want to perform the next couple of steps here that we're going to perform in our upgrade before you have other editors or before even you as an admin make changes to the website. So let's go ahead and switch back over here to our PowerPoint and talk about the next step in the process. So what we want to do is we now want to perform the upgrade for DotNetNuke. And as we saw, we're upgrading from DotNetNuke version 5.5.0. But we're going to upgrade to DotNetNuke 6.2, which, as I said, will be coming out here in the next couple of months. But the process that we're going to perform here to upgrade to 6.2 is exactly the same process you would go through if you were upgrading to DotNetNuke 6.1.5 or 6.1.4, whatever version of DNN you're upgrading to. The steps to perform the upgrade are exactly the same. So what we need to do is we need to go and we need to download the upgrade package for DotNetNuke. And I'll show you how to find that here in a moment. Once we've downloaded that file, there's an additional step we need to perform. We need to unblock the zip package. Windows will block certain zip extensions or certain files from zip files or zip packages. So we need to tell Windows that the upgrade package is safe, so we make sure to get all of the contents out of it. We're going to take all of the contents from that upgrade package and extract it into a new folder. We're then going to modify the web.config file on our website, and I'll show you which setting we're going to change. We're going to change a setting that currently says auto upgrade equal true. We're going to change that to false. And then we're going to create a file called app offline, and I'll talk about why we do that here in just a moment. So let's go ahead and perform some of those steps here. What I'm going to go ahead and do is go over to DotNetNuke.com in a browser and show you where you can obtain the upgrade package. Now, if you're upgrading to a newer version of DotNetNuke Community Edition, you can get the upgrade package by going to DotNetNuke.com, clicking on the download link at the top of the page. Now, when you go to visit the download page, if you are not currently logged in, it will essentially ask you to register or log in. So you can go ahead and log into the website. I'm just going to click the cancel button here. Oh, I guess you can't, so let me go back and do that again. So I'll just click on the register option, click free download. Like I said, if you already had an account, you could go ahead and log in with that account on DotNetNuke.com. I wasn't logged in with my account, so it didn't take me to this page immediately. But here on the page, rather than downloading the install package, which we would normally download if we were doing a new installation of DNN, we want to grab the upgrade package. So right here in the middle of the page, there is an upgrade package option. If we go ahead and click on that link, that'll take us to CodePlex. Now, CodePlex is typically where you would download the files for .NET This is for the Community Edition. I would go ahead and click on Agree. That's going to then download the .NET version 6.1.5 upgrade zip file. Now, I already have that file downloaded in a window here. And we can see, actually I have the install package and the upgrade package, but either one is fine. You can see .NET Community 6.1.5 upgrade.zip. So that's the upgrade package. What we're actually going to do is right-click on that file, the zip file. We're going to choose Properties. And within the properties on that zip file, I need to see if there is an unblock option at the bottom of the page. If there is an unblock option, you need to go ahead and click on Unblock. You won't always find an unblock option. That's fine. If you don't have unblock, then don't worry about it. You don't need to click on it. But I'll go ahead and click on it, click on Apply, and click OK. That will essentially tell Windows, hey, this file is safe for me. Let me go ahead and utilize that. So that's what we're looking for. Now, what I'm actually going to do is we're going to upgrade to .NET 6.2. And I already have the .NET 6.2 upgrade package downloaded here. If I check the properties on that package, I don't have the unblock options because I've previously unblocked it, so that's okay. Now what I would then perform is the extraction of that zip file. So I'd right-click on the zip file and choose Extract All, and that'll pull up a window here in which we're going to go ahead and Windows will extract all of the contents of that upgrade package. So I could go ahead and click on Extract, and that might take a couple of minutes while Windows extracts all of those files. There are a large number of files there, but because I've already performed that extraction, I'm going to go ahead and click Cancel. What I would then have is this DotNetNuke Community 6.2 Upgrade folder. That's the folder that we're going to utilize in order to actually perform the upgrade. Now, we've got a question that came in that says, why are there separate upgrade packages as opposed to upgrade and install? So why is there two different packages here? Well, the upgrade package is missing a couple of different files. It's missing the web.config file for DNN. And the reason for that is when you perform an upgrade, you don't want to replace an existing web.config file. The web.config file contains your connection strings, contains some of the machine keys, the encryption keys for logging into DotNetNuke, and if you replace that web.config file, you essentially cannot log into a DotNetNuke website once those keys have been replaced. So the upgrade and the install packages are two separate packages. Now that we've already extracted the files, if we were to go ahead and navigate into the DotNetNuke 6.2 upgrade folder, we would find the files for that particular upgrade. Now the next step we're going to perform, if we go back over here to our list, we've performed the first three steps. We've downloaded the upgrade package, we've unblocked the zip, and we have extracted the upgrade. Next steps we want to perform, we want to modify the web.config file. And really what we're doing here is we're going to tell DotNetNuke to not automatically fire off our upgrade. Now, we'll talk about that and why that's important when we go through the rest of the upgrade process. And then we're going to create a file in our website called App Offline. Now, what App Offline is going to do is it's going to essentially turn off our website. It's going to display a friendly message that tells people our website is going through an upgrade. That way, if someone were to try to access the website while we're performing the upgrade, they get a message rather than the website simply being turned off completely. So our website was back over here in the C inetpub www root folder. Now you may have installed DotNetNuke into a different location. That's fine. It's completely up to you where you install and manage your DNN websites. But I'm going to navigate into that folder to our existing DotNetNuke website. I'm going to open the web.config file. It's at the very bottom of the list of files. Now you can open web.config with Windows Notepad or Visual Studio if you choose to. I'm just going to use Notepad. The web.config file is an XML document. So here in Notepad, it's a little hard to read, but we don't really need to read too much out of it. What we need to do is we need to do a find. So you can press Control F, or you can go into the Edit menu and choose the Find option. And what I'm going to look for is the word Auto Upgrade. And if we click Find Next, it finds that right down here towards the middle of the screen. You can see that there is the string add key equal auto upgrade value equal true. Well, we're going to go ahead and change the value to false. What this will do is this will prevent the upgrade process for DNN from trying to fire off automatically. And the reason that's important is as an administrator or a manager of a DotNetNuke website, you want to make sure that you're the one performing the upgrade process. You don't want someone else who happens to hit your website to go through the upgrade process, because if there's a problem, then you might miss that particular error that gets thrown. Now, starting with version, I think it was 6.1 for DotNetNuke, we changed the upgrade process. if you leave auto upgrade to true with version 6.1 or any newer version of DNN, if someone hits the website and it tries to fire off the upgrade process, it will actually prompt them for the super user account information or the host account information. So they can't actually perform the upgrade steps themselves without logging in as a host or a super user account. But I still recommend you come in and you set auto upgrade to false just so you can ensure that someone else isn't performing the upgrade for you. Now a question came in here, it says, once you set auto upgrade to false, will you ever change it back to true? No, we're going to leave it as false going forward. So it never should be set back to true unless someone comes in and manually changes it back to true. Now once I've changed that file, I'll go ahead and click Save and close the web.config file. Now what we've done here is we've made a change to the web.config file. If I go back to my browser and I were to try to navigate to the home page of that website again, it's going to take a moment to get to that home page. Because of that web.config change, that restarts the website. But then the website goes ahead and loads up here as normal. So we're just about ready to disable the website now. So we can disable the website as we did before within IIS by coming in and clicking on Stop. But what we saw when we performed that process before is that causes our website to essentially return 404 errors if someone were to try to navigate to the website. That's not what we want. That's not the result we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a feature that was added back in ASP.NET version 2, and that feature is known as the app offline file. So what we can do if we go back to our file system here where our website is running, so we can come into that file system and create a new file called app_offline.htm. Now, how would I create that file? I would simply right-click here in the file system somewhere, choose New, and create a new text document, renaming it to appoffline.htm. I've already created one, so I'm just going to copy that created file and paste it here into the DNN upgrades folder, into the root of my website. If I were to go ahead and open that file, then I'll just open it in Notepad here. You can see it's just some very basic HTML. It has a title tag at the top. It has an H1 tag that says this website's being upgraded. I have some text on the page. Now, after that, I have some HTML comments, which just says we need extra info in the file to make it work in all browsers. Why that's there in, I believe, Internet Explorer, if you have an app offline file that's empty or less than 1 kilobyte in size, it will actually still throw a 404 error on your website. So it's just extra information. It's not going to display on the page, but it will make the page display properly. So once we've added appoffline.htm into the root of our website, if we then try to go back to our browser and refresh our website, no matter what page on the website we try to access, we get the website is being upgraded message. So I get this website is being upgraded. Thank you for visiting our website. Anything that we had included in that app offline file shows up here as the message. And it doesn't matter if I'm on the home page or if I try to go to the admin page. The app offline file is rendered to all those requests. So we've effectively disabled our website, but we're still displaying a friendly message to the users. We could include other information in that message if we want. All right, so we've gone through these steps. We downloaded the upgrade package. We unblocked the zip file. We extracted that package. We modified the web.config. We set auto upgrade to false. We created an appoffline.htm file. and then we access the website to test the app offline. Now the name of that app offline file is important. It has to be app_offline and then .htm. I think .html will work, but I know that .htm will. So if you want to just create an app offline.htm file, that's a very easy way to disable your website. Now the reason we disable that website is because we then have to perform a couple of more steps here to perform the upgrade. So the next step is we need to take the contents of that extracted upgrade package. We want to copy all of those contents, and we're going to paste those contents into our existing websites folder. And then we're going to access a specific URL, whatever our domain or our URL is, /install/install.aspx. We'll perform that step in a moment. Let's go ahead and do the copy for the files. Now if we go back to our Community Edition 620 upgrade file where we've already extracted the contents, we're going to go ahead and press Control-A here within the folder to select all of the files. Go ahead and right-click and choose Copy. So we're copying all of the contents of the upgrade package. We're going to switch back to our website folder. We're going to right-click and we're going to choose to paste. Now, when I choose to paste here in the website folder, Windows is going to prompt me to see if I want to replace a number of things. So we're going to go ahead and check the box that says do this for all the current items. So right now it's trying to replace folders. So we'll go ahead and check the box, click on yes. And then we're going to get another prompt here for individual files themselves as opposed to the folders. We're going to check the box that says do this for the next 1,203 conflicts. We're going to choose copy and replace. So we're taking all of the upgrade files, we're replacing those files within our DotNetNuke install. Now, in most cases, after you perform that paste, you can go to the next step, which is to call a specific URL in your website. In random instances within specific web servers, you might need to go in and reset your file permissions. If by chance you needed to do that, you would simply navigate up one folder, right-click on your DNN upgrades folder, choose Properties. You could go to the Security tab, and then come through here and reset your permissions. You would go into Advanced, change permissions, choose the Replace All Child Object Permissions. In most cases, you don't need to perform that step. But if you run into any permissions errors, that might be a step that you go through and you check. Now, we haven't actually called the install URL yet, so the upgrade hasn't completed. But let me talk about what we did when we replaced all of those files. So what we ended up doing is we replaced a lot of the code and the information for DotNetNuke. When you perform an upgrade from an older version of DNN to a newer version of DNN, most of the code that runs the platform gets replaced. If you have ever modified the code for DNN, when I say modified the code, I'm talking about modifying ASPX files or ASCX files or code behind .vb or .cs files. If you ever modified those types of files, those are things we call core changes. When you perform an upgrade, you will lose your changes, your core changes. That only occurs for the kind of the source code for DNN itself. Any custom modules that you've installed, any custom skins that you've installed, any files such as logos or documents or other files that you've uploaded to your .NETNuke website do not get replaced. They still remain there in their original location. So as long as you haven't made core changes to the platform, performing upgrades is very easy. If you've made core changes, well, that's a whole nother discussion that needs to be had. We really don't have time to get into it in today's session. But we try to recommend that you do not make core changes because that can cause problems when you do need to do an upgrade, and it causes a lot more work that needs to occur. So we've gone through, we extracted the files, or we've copied the extracted files over our website. If we were to go to our browser again, and we were to try to load the home page of our website, it's going to take a moment to load up here, but what we're going to see is we still get the website is being upgraded message. And if we try to go to /install/install.aspx, which is the URL that we need to call in order to perform the upgrade, we still get the website is being upgraded message. As long as you have the app offline file in the root of your website, you effectively turn off your website. So what we need to do is we need to go back to our website and remove the app offline file. So I can right-click on that file and I can delete it. Now I could also rename the file. If I wanted to rename the extension to .sav, then that would rename it. It would no longer be appoffline.htm. And once it no longer has that name, it no longer disables the website. Now I'm going to go ahead and just delete it. And if I were to now navigate to the root of my website, HTTP DNN upgrades, I get an under construction message. You'll notice the URL is /install/underconstruction.htm. That is because we have auto upgrade set to false. Well, in order for us to fire off the upgrade, we need to replace the underconstruction.htm with install.aspx. So we're going to navigate to whatever the name or the URL of our website is, /install/install.aspx. And when I navigate to that URL, if I go ahead and hit enter on the keyboard here, that's going to fire off the upgrade process. And what you'll see here is DotNetNuke goes through and performs the upgrade. Now, we started with DotNetNuke version 5.5.0. We upgraded directly to version 6.2.0. So what happens here is DotNetNuke goes out and it performs and executes a number of scripts that need to be executed. It does a lot of information with the database. There's a number of SQL scripts that have to be executed here. Performs a number of steps within the application itself. One of the major things that changed from DotNetNuke version 5 to DotNetNuke version 6 is we changed the language for the platform from Visual Basic.NET to C#. So the upgrade process has to go out and remove all the old VB script and replaces it with the C# scripts. And this install.aspx screen, if we take a look at it, we should see green success messages on most lines. Now there are some lines that don't have a message on the end of it, that's fine. But what you're really looking for is you're looking to make sure there are no red error messages here. If there are no red error messages, it basically tells you that everything installed successfully. Now the upgrade or the installation here installs a number of new extensions for the platform. It installs the new menu system for DNN. It installs messaging modules. Because we're upgrading to version 6.2, there's a lot of new social functionality that's in the platform. So we've gone through and it's installed all of these new features. Now there's a couple questions coming in about, because I'm installing version 6.2 and I didn't install, say, version 6.1.5, if I were installing 6.1.5, I would have performed exactly the same steps that I did here. Now for older versions of DNN and with older releases of DNN, it used to be where you had to upgrade in steps. So let's say I was on version 4.9.5 and I wanted to upgrade to version 5.5. A couple years ago, you used to have to go through kind of a stepped or a stepped upgrade process. You might go from 4.95 to 5.1, and then you might have to go to 5.2, then you might have to go to 5.5. Most of those issues have been addressed. And what I would recommend is you try to upgrade to the latest version that whatever your intended target version of DNN is, directly. You shouldn't need to go through a recommended upgrade path. If a couple questions that are coming through here, I'm going to try to address most of the questions at the end of the session, but since there are a couple that are related to this particular screen, one of the questions says, if there are any red error messages, what do you do? Well, if there are red error messages, what you do depends on where the error message occurred. Sometimes the errors would occur within an individual extension that's trying to install. Sometimes the errors might occur up above in the SQL scripts at the top of the installation status report here. Depending on where that error occurs, you need to do a little bit more digging. The first thing I would do if I had an error is I would most likely roll back my website. Now, first off, I wouldn't have been doing this in production anyways. I would go through and do this in a test environment as we've been doing here. But if I needed to roll back that test environment, then I would need to restore my file system and restore my database. And we're not going through the restore process in today's webinar, but I think I have there's some videos in the video library and kind of going through and performing the restore. Another question relating to SQL scripts asks, with the SQL that's being executed, is that being executed over the existing database? The answer to that is yes. These SQL scripts are executing against the current .NETNuke database, and they're performing scripts to upgrade it. So we were on 5.5. There were a number of SQL changes over the versions between 5.5 and 6.2. So .NETNuke executes those changes in order, and you can see that here. So we started at 5.5. The first SQL script that gets executed is 5.5.1, 5.6.0, 6.1, 6.2, 6.3. Then we go to 6.0, 1.2, and then etc. all the way down to 6.2.0. So .NETNuke, even though we're going from one version to another, still performs that interim upgrade between all the various versions, even though we're just going from one to the other. But what we should see at the bottom of the screen, we get an upgrade complete option, and then click here to access your site. Now, if I go ahead and click on that link, that's going to take us back to the home page for our website. And we shouldn't really see anything too much different. I will point out a couple of differences, though, as we get back to that home page. So the first major difference as we go back to the home page is the control panel at the top of the page. In .NETNuke 6, the control panel is completely different from what it was previously. So if we mouse over admin, host, modules, you can see up here we have our new control panel. Now, there is one other change on the page right now that is a bug in .NETNuke 6. I just filed the bug report for it this morning. I don't know if it'll be addressed in the initial release of 6.2. I'm hoping it will, but I'm not positive it will. The bug right now, because I went from version 5.5 to 6.2, and my website is still using the original skin called Minimal Extropy, there is a bug in the menu where the styling for that skin, the menu no longer is styled. So you can see where it says home here in the menu. In the previous version of DNN, that was the home was bigger text, it was centered. If I moused over it, it highlighted it in red. So there's a bug in the styling for the Minimal Extropy skin when you upgrade to .NETNuke 6. If your website is not using the Minimal Extropy skin, then this would not likely be an issue for you. Now if we go ahead and navigate to the host settings page, what we should see is we are now running on version 6.2.0. So we upgraded directly from 5.5 to 6.2 without having to perform any interim upgrade steps there to go from version to version. And we just as easily could have gone to 6.1.5, which as of today is our currently latest release. That'll be changing here in the next month or two. 6.2 will officially release here within the next month or two. So we wanted to go ahead and just show you how you can perform that upgrade because the steps are exactly the same. All right, so now what I would do is I would go through and I would use my site. I would check to make sure there are no bugs within my custom modules, within content on various pages. You want to go through and make sure things are still working as they initially worked. We're going to skip over that process though, and we're going to go ahead and perform an additional upgrade. We upgraded from DotNetNuke 5.5 Community Edition to version 6.2 Community Edition. Now I'm going to upgrade a Community Edition website that's actually running 6.1.1. I'm going to upgrade that to 6.1.5 Professional Edition. And if you want to disconnect now, you've already seen exactly the same steps we're going to do for that. We're going to back up our file system. We're going to back up our database. We're going to extract the upgrade package. We're going to disable the website with an app offline file. We're going to modify the web.config, and then we're going to copy the files. Upgrading from Community to Professional Edition is exactly the same process as upgrading from one version of Community Edition to the next version of Community Edition. And upgrading from Community Edition to Enterprise Edition or Professional to Enterprise is exactly the same process. So let's go ahead and kind of go through that process. We're going to go a little bit faster here because we've already gone through a lot of those steps already. So we're going to do this one, perform this one a little bit quicker. So back to my file system. I have an additional website. It's running at, if I pull it up in a browser, it's running at DNN Upgrades 2. So it's a completely different website. It's DotNetNuke version 6.1.5. As you can see, it's 6.1.1. It's Community Edition. So this is the website we're going to perform the upgrade on. It is in C, INETPub, www root, DNN Upgrades 2. So I'm going to back up the file system by right-clicking and choosing Copy, then choose Paste. So I now have backed up the file system. Now this website does differ from the previous website in that it is not running on SQL Server Express. It's running on a full version of SQL Server 2008. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to perform a backup of our database in SQL Server 2008. SQL Server 2008, you're going to go ahead and connect to your SQL Server using Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. I've already connected here. And I'll find a DNN Upgrades 2 database. I go ahead and I right-click on the Upgrades database. I'm going to choose Tasks. I'm going to choose Backup. From here, I get to choose where the backup file is going to go. Out of the box here, I can just leave it as disk and have it go into this backup folder. If I want to change the location, you can click on Add and choose a new location. All I want to do is make sure that SQL Server has a backup of the database. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and it'll perform that backup. Now this assumes that I have access to the SQL Server database with Management Studio. If you don't have access to the database server itself, you'll need to check with your hosting provider to see how they perform backups. But I've effectively backed up that database. If I wanted to, I could come back in here and choose to restore that database, and it would allow me to restore the database from that backup file. So we backed up both the database and the file system. And for those of you who got connected late this morning and missed some of these steps previously, we are recording the session. The session will be available later today. You'll get an email actually tomorrow with information on how to access that recording. So like I said, we're running short on time, so I'm going to fly through a lot of the steps we've already covered here. Next couple of steps, we're going to go into the website folder. We're going to modify the web.config file. Once again, we're going to change auto upgrade from true to false. So I open the web.config, find the auto upgrade section, change the value. I'm going to disable my website by placing an appoffline.htm file in the folder. And if we were to try to access that website again, we see the website is being upgraded message. So we've now disabled the website, modified the web config, backed up the file system, backed up the database. Now, finally, what we're going to do is we're going to go and get the upgrade package for .NET Professional Edition. Now, the only way you can get the upgrade package for Professional Edition is if you have a license for .NET Professional Edition. That's not something that you can download from Codeplex. It is something that's only available to customers. But when you download the upgrade package, you effectively get the same thing that we saw previously. We get a file called upgrade.zip. And in my case, it's here at the bottom of the screen. So I would right-click on that file, choose Properties. If I need to unblock it, I can choose Unblock. And then I would go through and perform the extraction of that file. I would extract the contents of the file. I've already done that into this .NET Professional 615 upgrade folder. I'm going to copy the contents of the upgrade package. Control-A to select all. Right-click and choose Copy. And then we navigate back to the folder where our website is. We're going to paste. Go ahead and check the box that says yes, and then check the next box that says copy and replace. So we've put the files in place. Now we need to remove the appoffline.htm file. Once again, if we go back to the browser, we try to access that site, we're going to see the under construction message. It's a little bit different of an under construction message. That's okay. It just happens that we've started with a newer version of DNN. The file changed a little bit. But we're going to perform the same steps. We're going to replace under construction.htm with install.aspx. And that will fire off the upgrade. Now at the top of the screen we see we were initially on version 6.1.1. We are upgrading to 6.1.5. It's going to execute the SQL scripts necessary for that. So it goes 6.12, 6.13, 6.14, 6.15. Performs the application upgrades, cleaning up any files as necessary. Then it goes through and it installs any packages that are necessary. What we see here, there are a number of different modules that get installed, different than what we saw on the previous upgrade. Because we're installing .NET Professional Edition now, there are Professional Edition modules that come with the upgrade package. Those were not included within the Community Edition for obvious reasons. So we should once again see success messages next to most of the lines. At the bottom we should have the click here to access your site option. If we click the link, that takes us to our website again. We're not going to see any difference on this website from going from Community to Professional Edition, except for we now have the yellow licensing message that shows up here within Professional Edition. That's because we have to go ahead and we have to activate the license within Professional Edition. Now you would do that by logging in as the host or the super user account and navigating under the host menu. There's a licensing page. So those are the steps for going from Community to Professional Edition. They're exactly the same steps that we followed to upgrade from one Community Edition to another. I'm going to go ahead and switch back to the PowerPoint here. And right before we get into the Q&A, just a reminder, we do have one more webinar or web seminar here in our .NET Nuke Explained series for content editors and updates. That will be on May 22nd. You can sign up for that on our website. We also have our standard .NET training subscription to get you access to over 90 hours of on-demand training recordings. We are going to be offering some new live webinars and classes coming up with the .NET 6.2 release. Those will most likely start towards the end of June, run through July and August. So those basically include an additional about 40 hours of live training we're going to be offering to our training subscription members. You can sign up for a training subscription, get you access for a year to all of our recorded training and the live training, that more in-depth training we have coming up. So let me go ahead and open it up to Q&A, and I'm going to try to go back through and start answering some of the questions that have come in previously. I would encourage you to go ahead and type in some additional questions. I do ask that you try to keep it on topic with upgrades for now. I'm not going to be talking about new features in 6.2 or some of the other things, as this was just our upgrade webinar. So one of the initial questions says, are the databases able to be backed up within host settings? .NETNuke itself does not provide a backup interface within the application. So the backup of your database would occur within the file system, as we saw, if you're using SQL Express, or within SQL Server Management Studio if you have access to your SQL Server, or depending on your hosting environment, you may need to have them perform the database backup. Oftentimes, hosting solutions will have a backup interface that you can manage through a web browser, but it doesn't get backed up directly within the .NETNuke application. Let's see. Two-part question here says, upgrading from 4.9.2 Community Edition. We want to upgrade to the latest Professional Edition. Do we upgrade to Professional first, or do we go to the latest Community Edition first? Then it says, can we upgrade to the latest version, or do we have to do it incrementally? So what I would recommend, if you're on version 4.9.2, and this goes for most versions older than 5, I would attempt to do an upgrade, say, to 6.1.5 Professional Edition directly without doing any incremental steps. But I would make sure, and you should always do this, you should always back up your website and your file system. That way, if there are any problems, you can roll back. If you do run into problems going directly from 4.9.2 to 6.1.5, you may need to do it incrementally. On the wiki link that I talked about earlier, let me go ahead and just pull that up in the browser here, that URL, bit.ly/DNN upgrades. On that page, there is a link to an upgrade path if you want to go from interim versions. I would only do that if your upgrade has failed, trying to go directly to the latest release, though. Another question here says, does the upgrade process work with HTTPS? I believe so. I don't know of any reason it wouldn't work if you were accessing your site through HTTPS. One question here says, does the upgrade overwrite the default skin settings? The upgrade shouldn't overwrite the default skin settings as long as you haven't made changes to the skin. Now, I did point out the bug where the default skin in .NETNuke 5, that skin is called Minimal Extra-P. The styling for that menu within the skin does get lost in the upgrade. I can't pinpoint why exactly that is. I have a theory on why, but I'd have to do some more research. I'm hoping that'll be addressed in a future release, though. That would really potentially only affect you if you still use the original .NETNuke 5 skin, however. My theory is that the changes we made in 6 to a document called default.css probably removed some of the default skin information. I could be wrong on that one. Another question here says, what happens to the module we install? Can they stay there, or will they be gone when you do an upgrade? Modules and skins that you've installed in your .NETNuke website will not be replaced or lost during an upgrade. Now, it's always good to test those third-party modules or custom modules to make sure they work with the newer version of DNN, but the intention for .NETNuke upgrades is to not break modules and skins. questions here. So another question here is, are you going from 5.5 to 6.2 for demo purposes only, or do you have any recommended upgrade paths? So I think I addressed that. If you still have questions about the upgrade path, go ahead and let me know. But for the most part, I would recommend trying to go to the latest release directly. If you run into problems, then you might need to go through minor version or through a versioned upgrade approach. But the initial approach I would take is to go to the latest release. Another question here says, are there any known bugs with styling of third-party skins? So one of the changes in DotNetNuke 6.2 is a new kind of user experience interface for a modal dialog. I have seen that cause problems with third-party skins. I think we've fixed most of those issues, but there's always a chance that third-party skins may not work. Unfortunately, we can't test every scenario, so that's what I would recommend is you go through and you test your site with the latest release in a test environment and see if you need to make any changes to the skins when you do an upgrade. Let's see. Follow-up question here says, can I upgrade directly from 5.6.1 Community Edition to 6.1.5 Professional Edition without stepping through versions? Yes, you should be able to go directly. Another question here is a good one, and I didn't really touch on this because there's a lot of different variations, but the question is, what if you want to upgrade a site that isn't local? If you have a hosting provider and you have access to the site via FTP, don't have access to the SQL server, how do you go through and perform your backups? How do you perform the upgrades? So it's going to vary with every host and every different configuration that you could have with a host. But if you have FTP access to the website, the backup process would typically be to go through and download all the contents of your site via FTP. That would typically take longer than just doing a copy paste like I did, but it is still a necessary step. How you connect to that is going to vary based on your host, what they have for FTP access, but I do have some videos in our DotNetNuke video library on upgrades and doing an upgrade via FTP, so I'd encourage you to check that out. Under the Resources tab on DotNetNuke.com, at the very bottom right of that Resources tab is a video library link, and once you go there, you'll find a list of all of the videos we have. If you search for FTP on that page, you'll find the upgrades via FTP information. So that'll hopefully help you with some of that. How you perform the backup of the database, though, like I said, will really vary based on the host. I imagine the host you mentioned in your question probably has a web interface for performing the backups, but you'd have to check with them to be sure. Another question here says, will older templates work with new upgrades such as CSS and other HTML styles? So I'm not sure exactly what you mean by templates. There are a number of different things within DNN that oftentimes will be referred to as templates. If you're talking about skins, most skins for .NET 5 will work with .NET 6. That's not to say they wouldn't need a couple of CSS changes, but for the most part they should work. If you're talking about HTML templates, which are something within the rich text editors for DNN, I believe the HTML template file name format changed in .NET 6, so you might have to change the format of your template files, just change the extension. Another question here says, where can I get the 6.2 beta? So the 6.2 beta, if you go to .NETNuke.com and you go to the blogs, there's a recent blog, it was from last week, that talks about 6.2 beta and has a download link there. The other option, if you go to CodePlex, if you know how to get to the .NET CodePlex page, it is one of the options there within the downloads. We're not recommending that you upgrade to 6.2 beta in production at this point. We don't have a supported path from 6.2 beta to 6.2 production. Beta is only for use in testing, make sure that your modules work, any new features, testing for bugs. When we do the full official release of 6.2, the upgrade steps from going, say, 6.15 to 6.2 will be exactly the same steps we saw today. But we aren't guaranteeing, unfortunately, that the beta can be used in production and upgraded to the production release right now. Question here says, is it recommended to customize the under construction.html file to have the same look and feel as app offline, to make it basically to make it all transparent to the users? Yes, you can go ahead and make changes to that under construction.html file to brand it for your website. Out of the box, it has some .NET branding. You could go ahead and change that and add whatever information you want to it. Under construction.html, I believe, is not a file that will be replaced in an upgrade. So if you make changes to it, it does not get included with the upgrade package, so you don't risk losing those changes. One question here says, my experience with incremental upgrades is that the admin toolbar ribbon is not upgraded. Is there a way to upgrade this after the site is already on DNN 6? I'm not sure why your control panel wouldn't have been upgraded. I don't know offhand how to go ahead and fix that, unless it's simply a matter of the setting. So there is a host setting on the host settings page for the control panel. It could be that you have your control panel set to the icon bar option as opposed to the ribbon bar. So you can go ahead and check that out. Other than that, you might check in the forums or in the community exchange. I haven't seen people have problems with upgrading the control panel or trying to reinstall the control panel after the upgrade. I'm not sure what process you'd have to go through for that. All right, so another question here says, if upgrading from SQL Express from a SQL Express based site to a SQL Server Standard Edition based site, will the standard upgrade as you demoed suffice? So if you're going from SQL Express to SQL Server, there are some different steps that you have to go through to complete that process. I do know that I have a video for that within the video library, so converting from SQL Express to SQL Standard or Enterprise, check out that video. Once you've converted that, then I would perform the regular DNN upgrades, and you would go through the second upgrade process that we went through. So you back up your file system, back up the database using SQL Server Management Studio, and then complete the upgrade steps. Follow-up here was a response to the HTTPS question previously. The response here says, we do all of our upgrades over HTTPS and have never had any issues. So thank you for that follow-up there. Question here says, any plans to automate this process? There are a lot of details in performing these steps that make it involved and might discourage people from doing frequent updates. Are there plans to automate the upgrades? Yes. I can't tell you when that's going to happen, though. It's not by any means something that's just simple from us from a development perspective to implement, because there are so many different .NET websites out there. I completely agree that making the upgrade process automated as much as possible will go a long way to help our application be easier for people to upgrade, and that is an important thing for us. So eventually, hopefully, we'll see the point where you can actually, from within the application, click on a button that will go perform the backup of the file system, backup of the database, download the zip file, and perform that process for you. Currently, unfortunately, it's not automated. Now, we spent an hour doing this today, but someone who's done this a few times can go through an upgrade of a website in a very quick couple of minutes. Oftentimes when there's a new release of DNN, I have way too many .NET websites, but I can, within about an hour, upgrade 20 different installations, performing all the steps, backing up the file system, backing up the database, and then going through those steps. Question here says, I'm using a third-party module that will do a backup of my database and my file system, but you haven't mentioned this. Is this not a recommended approach? So there are a couple of modules out there and services that will try to do the upgrade for you automatically within DNN. Those are not modules that we as a corporation have created or have anything to do with. So I can't recommend them because we don't control those. If there's bugs, if there's problems, we don't have anything that we can do about those. If they work for you, continue to use them. If they, I'm not saying that they don't work at all. It depends. I personally know people who've had problems with them, but I know other people who have never had a problem with them. So if they work for you, feel free to keep using them. For peace of mind, I would still recommend you do some manual backups here or there just so that you have a recovery approach if those tools were ever to fail. All right, it looks like that's all the questions. Thank everyone for attending today. Appreciate you guys coming and going through the webinar here. Like I said, the recording will be made available hopefully later today. You can find that in the video library later today. It will also be available via email sometime tomorrow. We'll send you information on how to access the recording. And like I said, we'll be doing another webinar here on May 22nd, so 3 weeks from today. And I look forward to seeing you then.